Hey now, it is Friday. It is the summer solstice, June 20th. How about that? We made it to summer of 2025. We're all still here. It's the 171st day of the year. We're like 10% through the first 4 years of this tyrant. Hey, maybe he doesn't make all 4 years. I don't know. Maybe he quits or gets impeached or dies of natural causes. But no matter what, there's nobody I'd rather be here with than you. So thank you for supporting my show and my work and this community. We hung out last night at our regular Thursday night hangout. There was like 60 or so people there. We were there for almost 3 hours. We had some great conversations about several different issues in the news, all kinds of different takes from people from all different backgrounds all around the world. That's what the stand-up community is. I should say all around the country. We're not really an international community. We have a few people and several Canadians, but we had a great conversation last night. If you are a paid subscriber, you get an email every day. I include a picture of nature I call hashtag Vitamin N as a tribute to the great Richard Louv, who is my favorite nature writer. If you haven't read his stuff, go buy it right now. And I get the vitamin N, and I also give now a little longer message. I've been writing a little message to you every morning. It's kind of mostly silly. It's mostly just silly. It's a silly, fun way to open your morning email with some nature and a message. And, of course, that day's guest links to all of the rest of my work and other things. But also, finally, and landing the plane, the link to that night's hangout. You can go watch it and hear what everybody had to say, laugh along with us, and sometimes cry as well. Wonderful gathering. I'm always so happy to be a part of in this community with you. So thank you. Thank you very much for everybody who came to the hangout. And I hope you'll come Monday at 8 p.m. Mondays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Put it on your calendar. Join us if you're a paid subscriber, patreon.com/Pete Dominick. That's the commercial. Most podcasts have commercials. I'm not selling you anything. Not now. If someone offers me some tremendous amount of money to sell something that I believe is useful and might work, I could consider it again. But we were talking about this at last night's Zoom. So many progressive radio shows, forget about the conservative ones, are constantly trying to sell you shit that doesn't work and arguably could hurt you. All these health supplements and so on. But a lot of people wasting their money, and a lot of progressive radio and podcast hosts giving their voice, doing the actual read for the product. And I don't want to be selling stuff like that. And so I need the subscription. So my ads are about the show. So if it sounds self-serving, it is. But at least I'm not selling you some bullshit. And hopefully there's some credibility in that and there's some trust in that. If you want to advertise on the show, let me know. We could talk about it. I'm not morally against it. I'm just not selling things for a few $100. That's what most people are getting paid, by the way, with a lot of these ads that they're putting on their dumb shows. My ad is for this daily podcast and the community that goes with it. There you go. All right. So let's get to the headlines. I've got a clip show for you here on Friday. And now I've also got JL Cauvin joining me. It's a great conversation with JL. As always, you can watch it on YouTube at youtube.com/standupwithpete, along with most of the other interviews that I've done this week should all be up there as well. If you would rather watch them or use YouTube, that is great. And subscribe while you're over there to that and my Substack, which is also at Stand Up with Pete. All right, let's get to yesterday. Let's get through it together. Deep breath and yesterday's headlines. All right, as of this morning around 8 a.m., this is what I've got for you. I'm late on Friday, as I often, and because of the hangout, I like to give you the most updated news stories. And last night, an appeals court announced that Trump could keep control of California National Guard in Los Angeles. A big story, a big development. Federal appeals court cleared the way for our Mad King to keep using his National Guard to respond to immigration protests in Los Angeles, declaring that a judge in San Francisco erred last week when he ordered Mr. Trump to return control of the troops to Governor Gavin Newsom of California. I hate when I'm reading a little bit of the article, in this case from the New York Times, and I accidentally call him Mr. Trump. That's how you know I'm reading. in a unanimous 38-page ruling. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit held that the conditions in Los Angeles were sufficient for Mr. Trump, there I did it again, to decide that he needed to take federal control of California's National Guard and deploy to ensure that federal immigration laws would be enforced. A lower court judge had concluded that the protests were not severe enough for Mr. Trump, to use a rarely triggered law to federalize the National Guard over Mr. Newsom's objections. But the panel, which included 2 appointees of Trump and 1 of Biden, disagreed with the lower court, and the Mad King took a victory lap last night on Truth Social about that and made sure that everybody knew about that ruling that allows him to. He declared a big win as this Ninth Circuit backed his National Guard deployment in L.A. What does that mean for other cities around the country? We will see. All right, well, let's move on to the other big story yesterday, of course, which is the war in Israel and Iran. They are launching strikes at each other a week into their war. New diplomatic efforts are taking place. Other countries are starting to talk. Europe is setting Iran talks. And the Mad King signaled a 2-week window to decide on an attack. And, of course, he says 2 weeks about almost everything and then never follows through. And reporters sometimes do follow up and sometimes they don't. They usually do ask about it if they can. It's not necessarily always the best usage of the one moment you get with him all day long to ask that question because you know the answer, which is he made it all up. Last night on ABC, Jimmy Kimmel Live, I was watching, they had a segment making fun of him for how often he uses this 2-week time period. And he had 20 instances on big important things. So what the hell is that supposed to mean? It means we're all wondering if there's going to be the rapture in the Middle East, a nuclear war for now the next 2 weeks and indefinitely. I think he's getting cold feet. I think he's listening to some reasonable people. Apparently he's afraid that it could become like Libya and Gaddafi is one piece of reporting that I read coming out of people close to our Mad King. Anyway, the war continues. It's ugly. Israeli strikes have killed civilians across Iran. Many civilians have died in Israel as well. I saw this buildings destroyed in Israel, which is not generally the type of image you see there. But the stories are coming out of both countries of people who have died at this point. It's getting it's ugly and it's terrible. And we have poor leadership in the world right now, and so it's pretty scary. Israel struck dozens of sites in Iran, including Natanz and a heavy water nuclear reactor, which is originally called Arak, A-R-A-K, and is now named Kandab. Those are words you're going to be hearing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tehran would pay a heavy price for the strike that Iran made on one of the main hospitals where Israeli troops are sent, leaving dozens injured. Several explosions were heard over Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as a new wave of Iranian missiles targeted the country, resulting in at least 4 impacts. And there is a civil war raging of rhetoric in America amongst MAGA on whether or not we should be involved in this war. So it's crazy. It's a huge, crazy story, and we've got to kind of pay attention to it day to day. I feel like you're going to look at your phone and dial up whatever your favorite news or social media site is and see some horrible, horrible news about the United States getting involved. The moment you see that, if you do, it's going to be, we'll have to have an emergency Zoom hangout for that moment. All right, other news and headlines. Los Angeles Dodgers announced yesterday that they blocked federal immigration agents from entering their stadium as dozens of anti-ICE protesters gathered outside the venue. It's a really interesting story that I watched develop yesterday. If anybody's out there in LA, I was talking to Ronnie about it yesterday, so let me know what's going on there. The Department of Homeland Security has placed new limits on members of Congress seeking to visit and inspect immigration detention facilities. Lawmakers from New York and Chicago delegations became the latest to encounter resistance from federal officials on an attempted tour. So I don't know how they can do that, but a very important story to mention. But this was interesting. The travel ban doesn't just hurt targeted countries. This is from the New York Times. Travel and visa restrictions imposed by the Trump administration threaten patient care at hundreds of hospitals that depend on medical residents recruited from overseas. Foreign medical residents often serve as the frontline caregivers at busy safety net hospitals in low-income communities. Normally, the residents begin work on July 1st. Orientation programs for some of them already started this week. Now, some of those hospitals are racing to prevent staffing shortages. So, really important story and good journalism by the New York Times covering this specific issue. Oh, did you see the SpaceX Starship yesterday? Just absolutely blow up in a huge fireball. SpaceX Starship rocket explodes on the test stand late on Wednesday during preparations for its next launch. I mean, it's almost a metaphor for Elon Musk's life right now. Our Mad King granted TikTok another 3-month extension on the 2024 law that requires the app to find a new owner. So he's just going to keep kicking that can down the road because he certainly doesn't want to piss people off here in America that love TikTok, regardless of national security or any other concerns about it, apparently. Apparently, we're facing the first big heat wave of the year. If you're looking at the forecast or just being outside yesterday and today and the next few days, it looks pretty bad here on the East Coast. Could be dangerously hot in the Midwest this weekend as well. Britain also is projecting a major heat wave. So good luck, everybody. We're gonna bake over the next few days in a lot of this country. So I may not have a dishwasher at my new place, but I do have central air. So that is absolutely a game changer for my life. That's for sure. My productivity, my mood, everything. 100-day heat kind of saps you from being able to do much. Unless, of course, you're, coming here from another country looking for a better life. Then somehow you can work outside in it wearing long sleeve shirts and pants while you do any number of jobs that American citizens of all backgrounds will not do because we have other opportunities. Poor kids in America that want a minimum wage job get a minimum wage job at any number of obvious places like fast food restaurants. You can't get that job if you're an undocumented person, which is why you're milking cows at 2 a.m. in upstate New York. I mean, that's my understanding. Really need to have a deep conversation with an immigration historian and an immigration lawyer to talk about how it used to be in this country to get in and what it's like now and what it all means for people's actual lives. All right, finally, news that marijuana use is associated with a higher risk of stroke and heart attack, including among younger adults, according to new research. So maybe I should back off. I mean, I've been needing to back off for a long time. I'm going to back off. All right, that's it. I'm backing off. I don't know what that means. Hold me to it. Okay, those are all of the headlines I believe I've gathered for you. Let me just make sure I've not missed anything. You know what? That's it. I just want to wish you a happy summer solstice. Peak sunshine has arrived in northern hemisphere, and it is the longest day of the year north of the equator. I don't know if you mark the solstice, if you do anything for it, that's cool. I wish I had a solstice tradition. Maybe this is my year. But after this, days start getting shorter. So live it up or realize that the next few weeks are the longest days of the year, obviously, and enjoy, schedule time to be out later, maybe. To be staying outside later, go for some later walks when there's still sunlight, etc. But get out there. Don't just maybe settle in at 7 or 8 p.m. the way that you might in the rest of the year. Consider it. Okay, that's it. Now let's get to the clip show. I've got several great clips to share with you on today's episode of Stand Up. I put these together every day, all day, and many people send them ideas, and I really appreciate it. standupwithpete@gmail.com is my email. You can copy me on a post on social media. I often see them there as well. And let's start with a clip that came just that way from my friend Adam, who copied me on Blue Sky. Another great commentary from Colorado 9 News Network in Denver. It's Kyle Clark with another great commentary. Love this dude, don't we?
Admitting when you're wrong is a sign of strength, even when you're a country, perhaps especially when you're a country. Because building monuments to heroes and victories is important, but any country can do that. It takes a special kind of country. I'd even say a great country to also memorialize mistakes, to put up markers saying that errors are also worth remembering so they're not repeated. Colorado has 2 such places. The Sand Creek Massacre National Historic Site, marking the place where hundreds of Native men, women, and children were murdered in 1864. And the Amachi National Historic Site, where Japanese Americans were wrongly incarcerated during World War II. Now, a weak country led by insecure people would try to ignore that history, try to bury it. A great country, led by strong people, is not afraid to say when it has fallen short of its ideals. There are new signs up at Amachi and Sand Creek in Colorado, signs put up at the direction of the Trump administration, asking visitors to report if they see anything negative about America there. I imagine you would read something negative about America at historic sites designed to memorialize mistakes that America is promising not to make again. It doesn't take courage or strength for a dictator to pin on a chest full of unearned military medals, or for a leader to build a statue of himself, or to order tanks and missiles to parade before him. Americans know those things are actually signs of insecurity, like those literal signs at Amachi and Sand Creek. Fortunately, Americans are not that fragile or that small. Americans know this country is at its greatest when its history isn't whitewashed out of weakness.
What a great piece of commentary by 9 News in Denver, Colorado. Kyle Clark. Go follow him on social media. He's over on Blue Sky where he's very active. And I love that. So we go from that to another great piece of commentary. I love this because Trevor Noah and Jon Stewart in conversation is got to be a great listen, I says to myself. And I found this clip from Trevor Noah's podcast where Jon Stewart, who hired Trevor Noah, of course, was a mentor to him for a long time at The Daily Show. And I thought it was just a great, thoughtful commentary from Jon Stewart about how he sees his Jewish identity and the difference between religion and all of it. And I guess it doesn't need much more of an intro. Listen to this. This is thoughtful.
By the way, we'll get into that later. The Jewish diaspora thing. I've been really considering this in my head. It's something we can talk about later.
Oh, we should definitely talk about it.
All right. You want to talk about it now?
We'll talk about it right now.
Let's talk about it right now. So I've been thinking about this. This is in a larger context of good Jew, bad Jew, right? So I'm clearly not religious.
Okay.
I sometimes admire people of faith, but I can't get there. Like, I know it's sort of like faking orgasms for me. Like, there's a certain, and I'll do the people will say, like, oh, bow your head in prayer. And I'll be like, And then we'll do a moment of silence. But in the silence, I'm really like, I wonder, is anybody, oh, look at that dude over there. I'm not really silent. So I don't get it, but I am Jewish. Like, it just is. It is what it is. And it's born of that. That's my family. They were Jewish. Their parents were Jewish, whatever it was. But this idea somehow, and it ties into Israel, that whatever you were born as, you won't be safe unless you are somehow ensconced in some version of an ancestral home, I think is a really dangerous precedent. I think the idea that we must go home, like, this is where I pointed, that's where I'm from. That's my home.
Right.
Like, I can triangulate where I'm at. This is where I feel most comfortable. This is where I'll always gravitationally come back to. I don't live in a diaspora. I've been to Israel. I was like, wow, that's impressive. I could see why they wrote the Bible here. It looks that's a lot of mountain. That's a lot of desert. But I reject the idea somehow that communities of people aren't whole unless they are able to repopulate some ancient version of where they believe is their source. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense.
And I don't know if that's applicable to the African diaspora, but for me, I think it's a dangerous precedent to tell people that they will never be safe unless they are somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I always feel like, well, then the job is to make us all safe here because this is my home.
Yeah.
That's what I've been.
Chappelle said something to that effect, which I really appreciated. He said, we have to do a better job of making and I paraphrase him, our Jewish brothers and sisters feel so safe that they do not need to defend Israel regardless of what it does, because they feel like that's the only place where they will be safe.
That's right.
Which I think was
because
really
it
poignant.
does. It puts you in a moment where you say to yourself, I have to, because they're fighting for me.
Right.
But that can't be, because that's then they have to be forced to dehumanize someone else. And that can't be.
Ooh, yeah. How about it? Gives you a lot to think about, and that's a great clip to share with friends. And I love Jon, love Trevor in that conversation together. Real good. All right, let's move on to something a little lower brow, kind of funny, a little bit weird. But Jon Carroll, who is an eccentric woman who sued and brilliant woman. I'm not insulting her by saying she's eccentric. I like that in people. A lot of New Yorkers I know like this. Anyway, Jon Carroll she's got a new book out and she's promoting it. So she went on, I think like the Midas Touch channel or something. And she was talking about what it was like sitting just feet away from Donald Trump. And I don't know if he really farted or if she just made this up, but I also don't care. I love it. And I think she's amazing.
And what this book does is we approach things in a light way because we understand this is a man who wears apricot makeup with his hair twirled around his head like Barbara Stanwyck in Ball of Fire, who we can beat. Robbie figured that out 5 years ago. Here, I was so close, Ben, I was so close. If I went this far and reached back, I could have him by the hair. I heard almost every single thing he said. Robbie had to stand up and object to Judge Kaplan, saying, Your Honor, if we can hear him, what does the jury think? And by the way, Ben, when you looked at the jury, they were like stunned by the moaning and his groaning and his weeping and his snarling and he was very cruel to Alina Habba, Esquire, really treated her terribly. I don't know how she carried on, but we were there. We saw everything. The farting, you wanted to know about that?
I didn't say that, but
it was a silent one. It was a silent one, sort of. That's all. All right.
She's fearless. I love that woman. That's great. And there's a little bit of justice there, and I'll take it. I'll enjoy it. All right. I also enjoyed this. Heather Cox Richardson talking with Barack Obama in Hartford, Connecticut the other night. I thought there wasn't audio, and apparently Heather Cox Richardson also didn't know it was being recorded, but it was. Here it is. I think the question is, are we there yet? Or are we an autocracy? And of course, you'll hear this clip and you'll hear Obama and you'll go through this thing in your mind like, wow, that guy sounds very smart and thoughtful. And then you'll compare him to what we have now. It's inevitable. It's coming. So deal with it, feel it, be in it. Here it is.
If you follow regularly what is said by those who are in charge of the federal government right now, there is a weak commitment to what we understood, and not just my generation, at least since World War II, our understanding of how a liberal democracy is supposed to work. And when I say liberal, I don't mean left. I mean liberal in the sense of believing in rule of law and independent judiciary and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly and protest. Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people, judges, and people in the Justice Department and people throughout the government who take an oath to uphold the Constitution. It requires them to take that oath seriously. And when that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy. It is consistent with autocracies. It's consistent with Hungary under Orban. It's consistent with places that hold elections but do not otherwise observe what we think of as a fair system in which everybody's voice matters and people have a seat at the table and there are checks and balances and nobody's above the law. And we're not there yet completely, but I think that we are dangerously close to normalizing behavior like that.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Well said, thoughtful, and always welcome. It's good to hear him. Good to hear from him there. That's all I'll say about that, because I got to get to a tough clip to hear. This is painful to hear, but worth hearing. We can't look away from it. And great reporting from KTLA in Southern California, where they were covering an ICE raid at a Home Depot, apparently. And I'm just going to play all the audio. There's some video of them chasing down this guy and tackling him and putting his face in the dirt. It's so fucking awful. But I just love this young woman who they interviewed. She was just so articulate and passionate and righteous.
Several people were running upwards Wilton's place. I informed them that ICE agents were around the area. They were aware of that, and then that's when an SUV pulled up, came out, 2 agents tackled down a individual with no questions. They placed his face into the dirt, physically apprehended him.
And we reached out to officials for more details on today's raid. They said while they can't comment on every single operation, these raids continue on a daily basis, and that today's raid was routine federal immigration law enforcement operation. You're out here. We've been seeing the gentleman who's been very emotional. His wife was detained. He has no idea where she was taken. But you said some of the people detained today were also your neighbors.
That's right. My neighbors, unfortunately, got taken. They are not bad people. They are not criminals. They are hard workers. They came here for a better life, because that's what the United States is about, right? You have freedom. You come here for a better life, because unfortunately you run from countries, your own home. That's not the best, right? You come here looking for a better life. You come here for sanctuary. You come here to think that you're going to make it out here. But unfortunately, with these people coming and taking our own people, the people that constructed California, the people that work for California, the people who do a lot for us, right? They're taking them. What are you going to do when we're not here? What are you going to do when you have nobody left to work with?
And the woman you mentioned who was taken, she's pregnant?
She's actually pregnant. That's the saddest part. She's pregnant. She must have been scared. You don't know if this is going to cause you stress to her baby. You don't know if she might lose the baby from the shock.
Quick question, and I don't mean to come across as insensitive, but this is part of the Trump administration's mandate. President making it clear that anyone who's here, who's not here legally, that this is going to be a part of the process, as inhumane as many may categorize it. There is another argument to that.
I feel like it's wrong. Like I said, they're saying that they're going to take everybody, but why everybody when you have actual criminals that were born here and who have done way worse stuff, and yet they don't get the same punishment we're getting? Why is that? I want an answer to that, seriously. Why is it that criminals can get away with so much who are born here, criminals, and yet our people are innocent? They're working hard. They're doing stuff to make it out here, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just amazing to have such a young person be so connected and articulate in how she's describing. I mean, there are so many amazing people out there, but you put a microphone doing amazing work, and they're awesome in all the ways, but you put a microphone in their face and it makes them nervous. And, you can't always, most of us can't articulate ourselves about an issue that we care deeply about right off the cuff. It's hard. And I thought that wasn't the case with her. So I wanted to share it. Okay. Also want to share this. I thought this was important, interesting, worth sharing. Catherine Rampell, who I love, is now an MSNBC anchor, and she was sitting in the anchor chair last night for The Last Word, and I caught this quick clip, which I thought was packed with polling, and I don't know, I just love Catherine, so here it is.
Donald Trump, the wannabe emperor, has no clothes, and the country knows it, and the polls now reflect it. As Trump's failures continue to pile up, the latest Fox polls show growing public frustration. And his worst numbers, believe it or not, are on an issue that Donald Trump ran on, the economy. Donald Trump is now down 30 points on inflation. 64% of registered voters disapprove of Trump's handling of inflation, and only 34% approve. 58% disapprove of how he's handling the economy overall, and 55% feel pessimistic about the economy. Then there's Donald Trump's foreign policy ratings. 57% disapprove of his foreign policy. The overall job approval rating from the Fox News poll is just 46%, which means that 54% of those that Fox News surveyed disapprove of Trump's overall job performance. And look, Donald Trump has seen these numbers and he is not happy. This morning, Trump took to his social media to lash out at the network, claiming that Fox has been, quote, biased against me for years. They are always wrong and negative. It's why MAGA hates Fox News, unquote. That is, news to some of us, but that is the kind of response we have now come to expect from the President of the United States.
All right, Catherine Rampell, I highly recommend that you watch everything that she's doing, read what she's writing. I've always been a big fan and supporter of her work. All right, here's a weird thing. I'm going to play Jesse Waters only because it leads me into Jasmine Crockett. But Jesse Waters on his Fox News show, he's probably the worst, dumbest, most awful of people. Just an awful, terrible person in every way that you could measure someone. The fact that he has the 7 o'clock slot is outrageous. But he had this woman on his show last night. She's a former Bernie Sanders advisor. Her name is Teslin Figaro, and she's a black woman. And if I see an image of a black woman talking to Jesse Waters, you got me. I'm going to click. I want to see it. And I was glad I did. Listen to this, and then I'll throw to Jasmine Crockett after.
Barack Obama can't get Trump's name out of his mouth. Everywhere he goes is Trump, Trump, Trump. What's wrong with Barack?
Well, guess what? The same thing is wrong with Trump. They keep talking about Barack Obama. They talked about Barack, or how you've been talking about him the last 30 minutes, or all of the Republicans. Just to be honest with you, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, Jesse. 1 minute you say Barack Obama's too classy, and the next minute y'all say Representative Crockett is too over the top. So which one do you want? Should they meet you where you are, meet you where you're at, which I agree with. You want to get ugly? Let's get ugly. You want to be polite? Let's go with Barack Obama. To be honest with you, I agree. The 2008 and 2012 strategies don't work anymore. You need to fight fire with fire. And it appears that Representative Jasmine Crockett, who I know you folks love talking about her, she seems to be meeting Trump right where he's at with the same type of rhetoric.
All right.
Well, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, our queen.
But let me also do this, because they love to cherry pick. They can find, any one person that has been killed. And if they've been killed by an immigrant, then God darn it, every single immigrant is going out and they are killers. And that is the problem. But they don't want to talk about white supremacy. I don't know how many hearings we going to have about the fact that there's been this one immigrant that killed this one person. And no, I'm not excusing any killings by them or white supremacists. But they haven't had these hearings. We didn't have a hearing on Buffalo and what happened there. We didn't have a hearing on El Paso and what happened there. We didn't have a hearing on Charleston and what happened there. So it's interesting that they pick and choose, because it seems like they love to pal around with the white supremacists, and so they don't want to talk about certain other things.
Yeah. Good stuff from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. I love it. Love her. Love the way that she communicates and talks, and some people are put off by it, and I would love to talk with them and have an honest conversation about why. I wonder why that is. Tell me. Don't we need fighters? I think we did fighters. I think that's what we were hearing earlier there. Okay, so speaking of, Maxwell Frost is a fighter. He is one of the youngest, if not the youngest person serving Congress. He was elected during the Biden administration, the midterms there, and he was on Colbert last night. He was on CBS last night, and I want to just give you the first couple minutes of their conversation, which I thought was thoughtful. Congressman Frost is a real smart young fella.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here.
It's been a bit. Last time you were here, you'd been in office for 9 months or something along those lines. It's been 2.5 years now. Compare and contrast your experience from the first year to now in the middle of your third year, and please support your answer with specific examples.
What's different now than 2 years ago? Look, obviously, we're in just so much chaos right now in this country. And when I think back to when I first got into Congress, I felt like we were doing so much good work with the administration. Mm-hmm. It was a different administration, by the way.
Yes.
And
different Congress, too.
Yeah, different Congress. And
yeah.
But I felt like, this fight against far-right neo-fascism, for me at least, was mainly taking stage in my home in Florida, fighting against Ron DeSantis and the extremism there. And something I always told people is that Project 2025 is actually Florida 2022. Florida 2020. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that's going on around the country right now, we've actually been dealing with in the South for a long time, especially in my state of Florida. So the difference is it's like the struggle in my state has kind of been just spread throughout the nation. Mm-hmm. And honestly, that day after Election Day, I had a hard time getting up, probably like a lot of other people. And I wasn't automatically feeling hope. You know, we think of hope as like a feeling. But I think about something I learned, which is like, long marriages, something people always say is that love isn't always a feeling. A lot of times it's a choice that you make actively. And I just thought, well, hope is the same way. I'm not always going to feel it when I wake up in the morning. And to be honest, like I don't always feel it every morning, but I'm actively going to choose it. So we're definitely in a different time.
Well, a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of people chose to be hopeful last week. 5 million people plus turned out for the No Kings rally, which was really it was an act of hope. It was hopeful to see. Thousands of people turned out in your district in Central Florida on the heels of the president sending in both National Guard, nationalized Army, National Guard, so Army members into Los Angeles and Marines in there, violating posse comitatus, arresting people. And that was all in response to ICE doing raids around Los Angeles somewhat indiscriminately, and even going into courts for people trying to do the right thing and pulling them out and trying to get them out of the country without due process. You have described that as taxpayer-funded kidnapping operation. What do you mean by that?
Well, because Donald Trump ran on this mass deportation thing, but the thing everyone needs to realize is deportation is a process. It's a legal process. Oftentimes it can take weeks, if not months, up to a year, depending on the case. And what's going on right now is actually not mass deportation even, because people aren't being given due process. There is no legal process for people. We have ICE federal agents pulling up, terrorizing our communities, hopping out of unmarked vans, stealing and, yes, kidnapping people, not giving them their day in court, and, yes, human trafficking them to other nations, other countries around the entire world. And I want to be I like to be very clear about what's going on right now so people understand that what is going on, I believe, is outside of the bounds of the law. Due process is something that applies to every person in this country, regardless of your status. And this is from the party that likes to talk a lot about American exceptionalism, but they want to rip away the few things that make our country actually exceptional. And part of that is the fact that our rights are for everybody.
Yeah, our rights are for everybody. I thought that was great from Maxwell Frost. I saw this last night as I was trying to fall asleep. I'm stupidly scrolling through Instagram, and someone posted this speech by a parliamentarian named an MP named Tony Benn, who had passed away about 10 years ago, but he made this speech 26 years ago, the war against Iraq, against invading Iraq the first time. And I think it's relevant and worthy to think of any time we're on the precipice of bombing or invading another country. This speech is great. It's about 2.5 minutes, and I just think it's brilliant. The man was born in like 1924, lived through the Blitz in London, and his point of view, I think, is very, very important in times like this. So here he is.
War is an easy thing to talk about. There are not many people of the generation that remember it. The right honourable gentleman served with distinction in the last war. I never killed anyone, but I wore a uniform. But I was in London in the Blitz in 1940, living in the Millbank Tower where I was born. Some different ideas have come in since. And every night I went down to the shelter in Thames House. Every morning I saw Dockland burning. 500 people were killed in Westminster one night by a landmine. It was terrifying. Aren't Arabs terrified? Aren't Iraqis terrified? Don't Arab and Iraqi women weep when their children die? Doesn't bombing strengthen their determination? What fools we are to live in a generation for which war is a computer game for our children and just an interesting little Channel 4 news item. Every member of Parliament tonight who votes for the government motion will be consciously and deliberately accepting the responsibility for the deaths of innocent people if the war begins, as I fear it will. Now, that's for their decision to take. But this is a quite unique debate in my parliamentary experience, where we're asked to share responsibility for a decision we won't really be taking, with consequences for people who have no part to play in the brutality of the regime which we are dealing with. And I finish with this. On October the 24th, 1945, and the former Prime Minister from Bexley Old Sidcup will remember it, the United Nations Charter was passed. And the words of that charter are etched into my mind and move me even as I think of them. We, the people of the United Nations, determined to save future generations, succeeding generations, from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has caused untold suffering to mankind. That was the pledge of that generation to this generation, and it would be the greatest betrayal of all if we voted to abandon the Charter and take unilateral action and pretend we were doing it in the name of the international community. And I shall vote against the motion.
All right. There you go. I love it. And so I hope you did as well. Worth sharing. Good clip show today, huh? I got some great clips. And how about this? Coming up, a very funny Jimmy Kimmel and Trey Crowder. But before that, to set up Kimmel, I've got Caroline Leavitt, who is the president's mad woman, young lady spokesperson, and talks in such a way that she's the easiest person to caricature in the world. Anyway, she has no right being there. She's a real DEI hire, if you will. And yesterday, she was asked about what, if any, celebration or commemoration there would be of Juneteenth. And, you know, you may have heard it, you may not have, but it sets Jimmy Kimmel up pretty well. But later on, by the way, of course, Trump did post late last night when he found out that it was a federal holiday, because he probably didn't know. He got mad. He probably didn't know. If he knew ahead of time, he would have used it if he knew Juneteenth was coming. But he was too busy thinking about his flagpole, I think. But he did say that we have too many holidays or something, like we don't work enough. We have too many days off, too many federal holidays. And, of course, he picked Juneteenth to do that. Anyway, here's Caroline Leavitt yesterday.
Just one more on Juneteenth. Does the president plan to commemorate the holiday today, or make any comment on it?
I'm not tracking his signature on a proclamation today. I know this is a federal holiday. I want to thank all of you for showing up to work. We are certainly here. We're working 24/7 right now.
Ugh. Oh, all right. Well, I'll let Jimmy Kimmel take it from there. Try to get that taste out of your mouth.
Back here in the good old U.S. of A., today's holiday is Juneteenth, which commemorates the date in 1865 that federal troops arrived in Texas and put an official end to slavery in the United States. Juneteenth became a federal holiday 4 years ago under the Biden administration. And while you might find this hard to believe from a president who's done more for blacks than Abraham Lincoln, Trump is not a fan.
One more on Juneteenth. Does the president plan to commemorate the holiday today, or make any comment on it?
I'm not tracking his signature on a proclamation today. I know this is a federal holiday. I want to thank all of you for showing up to work. We are certainly here. We're working 24/7 right now. Nikki, go ahead.
Actually, that was my question. Will you plan to mark Juneteenth in any way, either today or with an event later on, maybe next week?
Sure. I just answered that question for you.
And the answer was no. If Trump were to acknowledge Juneteenth, he would risk upsetting his not at all racist and how dare you say we are base. They're like, we're the ones who stopped enslaving. They should have a holiday for us. But then a miracle happened. Trump did post about Juneteenth. He wrote, too many non-working holidays in America. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. Says the guy who just had a birthday parade for himself. Says the guy who's been in office for 150 days and has golfed 37 times that we know of. It seems like, I don't know, to me, it seems like a holiday that celebrates the end of slavery is one we should all be for. But, I mean, not only isn't that the case...
Yeah, good stuff from Kimmel. And I wasn't going to include this because I thought the video mattered, but I think it's fine. He did a man on the street with white people about Juneteenth. It's brutal, but hilarious and expected. You know, it is a new holiday, and we are white people, after all.
Many Americans aren't even aware of what Juneteenth is. And so in an ongoing effort to educate, we went out on the street to ask white people to explain Juneteenth.
What is Juneteenth?
June 16th?
Juneteenth.
What's that?
It's a holiday. Have you heard of it?
Never heard of it.
What is Juneteenth?
I have no earthly idea.
June what?
Juneteenth.
Teeth?
Juneteenth.
T-E-E-T-H?
T-E-E-N-T-H. Juneteenth.
Juneteenth. Never heard of it.
What is Juneteenth?
What did I eat? I just had myself a cheeseburger.
Is it like holidays like Valentine's and Christmas and stuff?
You've never heard of it.
I've heard about it, and I would really love to do it.
Juneteenth is an important date on the calendar to make sure we are celebrating less represented minorities.
Which minorities?
I'm not comfortable answering that question for either show. I'm sorry. I don't want to look foolish, so I'm not looking to use that, please.
Okay.
I think most of your questions would embarrass me, but I don't want my insensitivity to...
Okay, that's it then.
Thank you, though.
What is Juneteenth?
Juneteenth for me is celebrating teens as in June. So yeah.
How do you celebrate teens?
Well, we hang out. We do sleepovers. We party. We do lots of stuff like that.
Can you look in the camera and wish everyone a happy Juneteenth?
Hey teens, happy Juneteenth.
Oh my God. You got to watch it too. You got to see these people out there. What is going on that street outside Jimmy Kimmel's studio? All right. Now let's finally go to Trey Crowder with one of his great car rants, about 2.5 minutes. He just got back from vacation. I thought this was hilarious and brilliant and poignant. I always love to include it. Love this guy. Here he is.
Hey y'all, I just got back from a family vacation where I unplugged for a bit. I thought, how much news could I really miss in a week, right? Yeah, I guess I somehow forgot that we're all living in a version of We Didn't Start the Fire that was written by a middle school bully with his whole fist wrapped around the pencil. Now, so much has happened, I don't even know where to start. First, all the people back home, yes, L.A. is still here. I know the news led you to believe that Mexican Tifa had turned the whole town into Cholo, Mad Max, or whatever, but LA's fine. We're all out here drinking nut milk and bitching about freeways as per usual. Like, I know that y'all so badly want to believe that liberal protesters ruin their own cities the way that drunk uncles ruin kids' birthday parties, but it just ain't true. I mean, if it was true, how is any American city left standing after millions of lefty protesters took to their streets on Saturday? Shouldn't those cities just be smoldering ruins, flying the tattered flag of a brown country you don't know how to spell? That's right, in a rare piece of, I believe it's pronounced good news, countless crowds protested this regime all over the country Saturday, a development made doubly encouraging by comparing it to MAGA's #1 special boys big Army Man themed birthday parade. That's right, in our nation's capital, squeaky tanks rolled down streets sparsely lined with patriots whose immunity to irony was matched only by their capacity to convince themselves that the whole thing wasn't a farce that would make Kim Jong-un cringe. Happy birthday, dipshit. May God help us all. But the most disturbing piece of news from the past week was, of course, the assassination of a Dem legislator in Minnesota and the wounding of another, clearly the actions of a madman, but still people are arguing over his political affiliation. To be fair, it's hard to say. I mean, this guy was a registered Republican, Gravy Seal, evangelical Christian who belonged to multiple online hate groups, voted for Donald Trump, and compiled a hit list of dozens of other left-leaning targets. So, could go either way. But anyway, they caught the guy, but we all know nothing's going to change. It never does. Awful things like this happen with such frequency that Americans talk about what should be once-in-a-lifetime atrocities like they're MCU movies. Like, oh yeah, which one was that? What was the bad guy's deal in that one? They all run together in my head. We're all desensitized to it, in part because leaders like GOP Senator Mike Lee respond to these horrors by shitposting memes and declaring there's nothing that can be done. But one white lady gets killed by an illegal immigrant, which is, of course, awful, and the right leaps into action, gleefully ripping up the Constitution in order to justify what is maybe the most profoundly authoritarian and inhumane fear campaign in recent history. Ain't that just the way? But I had to stop catching up on the news I'd missed right there because it was just depressing me too much, But I know it can always be worse, I mean, hey, it's not like World War III is about to start, right? Right? Love y'all.
All right. Trey Crowder, always great. Now it's time to get to my guest, finally. J.L. Cauvin is one of our all-time favorites. He has relaunched his podcast, Rain on Your Parade, a new iteration. I listened to it yesterday and really enjoyed it, as I always enjoy everything that he does. But go listen and subscribe. You can support him on Patreon as he does me here. You can also get a cameo from him. Order a cameo. Pay him for this amazing talent that he always shares with us. Lots of different ways you can support him, of course. Watch him performing live. And what else can I say about this guy? Hopefully he runs for Congress and we can all support him and volunteer on his campaign. We caught up yesterday. Great conversation as always with the always amazing JL Cauvin. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. And that's it. That's all I'll say for the plugs. Let's do it right now. We are live with true crime court reporter JL Cauvin, who is outside of the courthouse where Karen Reed has just been found apparently not guilty of in connection with the death of her boyfriend. JL, what can you tell us about this story?
Yeah, Pete, it's like Lilith Fair for women who can't afford Taylor Swift tickets and have no lives. There are literally hundreds of white women here crying, cheering for Karen Reed. They've been insisting. I said, is this like the white woman OJ? And they got very mad and said, she didn't kill anybody. They are chanting at one point, I don't know the DA's name, but they were chanting that he sucks. And all I could think of was, boy, it must be great to be a white woman and be able to literally call out your district attorney and say he sucks in a mass demonstration and not have an entire political party accuse you of hating America.
Wow. Thank you, JL. Back to the studio. Appreciate that reporting. You will not get that take on this story. I knew nothing about this case. I don't do true crime. I know a couple of people that have been covering it that I follow.
When I became aware of it there was an article, I want to say in the New Yorker, about a sort of right-wing true crime blogger podcaster who has a very large following and is one of the principal people who kind of elevated this story. So I became aware of it through that. Never heard of it again until the trial was over. And now I've been seeing, the jury deliberations and now a verdict today.
But they're just because we're not going to spend, this is the last point about it, but I am interested in how these specific cases or suspects become famous. And it would seem the obvious P. Diddy's and other Harvey Weinstein trials that are of already very famous people that have been taken down. Those are obvious why media and people are paying attention. But in this case, there's a whole nother industry of this case is the one that we're all going to somehow descend upon and write about and talk about and report on. And it feels very much like a white rich person. And I almost want to say attractive people, like well-off people when they commit crimes. It's more of it's somehow what happens? How does this one case, people get murdered, sadly, all the time in our violent country?
I think her boyfriend was a cop, and as you know, Blue Lives Matter.
They find
and
there.
She's a white woman.
Yeah.
And that was sort of and the allegations were that she was sort of framed. And I feel like true crime, representation matters. And for all these white women who love true crime and have made it like this huge industry, I think they finally said, I feel seen. Instead of it being a husband, blah, 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 another man murdered his wife for the money, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's a white woman accused of the crime. And apparently, from what I've heard, I guess a lot of people believe she was innocent and set up and then when you make a joke about it, I get attacked. Somebody said, I'll be MAGA in no time with my disregard for justice. With my flippant comment about her possibly being the white woman OJ. And I said, you need to get a life.
You did. I love reading. I love when you engage with your critics on social media and then share screenshots.
Don't look up what Norm Macdonald said about OJ Simpson. 2 people were murdered there and he built half a career off of being flippant about that. But I'm sorry for I love it when people read a joke. And you can do this with any joke. You can go very serious and literal about the joke and all of a sudden go, oh, well, I guess if you think that's funny to joke about. There's always a baseline to every joke that you can just strip it down to. That joke is actually about orphans, and orphans, it's pretty sad when you're growing up without parents. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'll remind me to just do, chicken crossing the road. Well, you know what? Roadkill is a serious problem, and I'm a vegan. So please don't do that.
You are also surgical in your examination of how anybody can be offended by anything, because you've offended everybody at this point, and you are very good to talk about it in the way that you do, to make people aware of how absurd I believe it has gotten in many ways, especially when you write a great joke. So, by the way, true crime content, apparently the demographics, women are generally more likely to consume it than men.
Men are more likely to commit it.
And
I almost got Cornel West in there. Men are more likely to commit true crime, Brother Pete, but the women are sisters who consume the content. We need to feed them spiritually, not just with content on the internet, Brother Pete.
Why the hell is Mitch McConnell also here talking about true crime? Oh my gosh, it's Andrew Cuomo, who is a mayoral candidate for New York City, is also talking about.
Well, you know what? It's called true charisma when an Italian does it, when a woman happens to end up dead in your bed.
And look, it's Alan Ritchson who plays Reacher. What is he talking about? You don't have an Alan Ritchson impression?
Assumptions kill.
Well done. Okay. One of the things I want to talk with you about, first of all, you have just posted a commentary on YouTube, which I hope you'll continue to do, but your podcast. But this
might be one of my I'm sorry to interrupt. This one might be one of my final ones regularly, because now the podcast itself is coming back tomorrow as of this recording.
See that? JL's Rain on Your Parade podcast returns tomorrow. If you're not subscribed, go subscribe right now. It's new and improved. You're going to be doing interviews. You read books cover to cover. You're a very smart, educated guy. I'm
like a phoenix stripper rising from the ashes.
Rain on Your Parade returns. And so you're going to be interviewing authors of the books you read, which I think is really great.
In addition to other things, I don't want it to become completely a book, like a C-SPAN's book TV. But, it will be, I get a lot of info from books, and I feel like, especially for my first couple of guests, they're in some ways timely and important. And then, for instance, I'm going to make a Hail Mary pitch since I donated a lot of money to him, to see if I can get Jay Inslee, former governor of Washington, on at some point. Because thanks to your show, I actually got to interview him as a guest host on your corporate media show. We shall not say the entity's name.
No, we can. It built me. It's fine.
But I want to talk about elder care with him, because Washington State under him was the first state to have an elder care program.
Definitely. That shouldn't be hard. I'll help you get Jay Inslee on it. That should be an easy lift. But anyway, the podcast returned. We're very excited about it. Your commentary on YouTube will now take place on the podcast, I'm sure. But today's piece was just a really interesting and thoughtful take on, and kind of bitter and angry take about what's been done around the transgender issue. This Supreme Court decision today that affects healthcare for young people, and in a big way. It's pretty dramatic. And you had, I thought, a nuanced, thoughtful commentary. You also mentioned, and I played a clip of Congresswoman Sarah McBride on Ezra Klein's show. I agree that she's very, very smart and articulate.
So impressive. So like, it's the second time I've heard her on a podcast. I heard her either on the New Yorker or some other highfalutin show that I listen to. There is a deep intelligence, but a sort of strength and grace to her. And I posted this today, just kind of thinking about these different things, because of course the New York Times had a front page article about a woman who was, I believe, I want to say a colonel, maybe not a colonel, but some rank in the armed services, who is a decorated veteran, respected by her fellow peers. A child of the military, and has to leave.
Erica Vandal.
There you go. Yes, thank you. And it's you're reading it going, it's all bullshit. And I'm sorry, it's all bigotry. It's all been this like convincing bigots that they're good people because we're only going so far. But the core of it is F these people, F their rights, F their existence, from trans to gay. And I don't think it stops at trans. I think, and I said in my video that I felt like the trans sports issue, and we talked about this the last time I was on the show. I said, if I'm being real, and I think Seth Moulton has expressed this kind of a viewpoint, Representative Seth Moulton, where it's like, I think there is certainly a conversation, a reasonable conversation to be had about the advantages and how to regulate, if you will, the participation of trans women in women's sports. That isn't bigotry. That isn't hatred. If that is the extent of your viewpoint, you don't have to agree with it, but that is not bigotry. That is not hate. I think it has become very plain that it is and always was a Trojan horse to usher in first an anti-trans sort of just overall, because look at it. Oh, it's about the kids. Okay. It's about parents' rights. It's about parents' rights, but now it's not about the parents' rights in Tennessee who have consulted with their child and their doctor.
What you're explaining is how the trans issue became from its birth to where it is now. And I watched it literally as you're explaining it. That's why I'm jumping in. I watched it play out at my school board. They started with talking about trans girls in the bathrooms. They lost on that. They won the election on it, saying that the board had made this law, even though it's New York State law. But they convinced people that our board members made this rule and that there was going to be tons of penises flying. They said it. They said penises. Kids went to the microphone at the school board meetings that there are going to be penises flying around the girls' room or whatever. They said, I don't want to see a penis in the girl. So they started there. Then they went to the sports thing. But your point is it was never about any of that. Really?
Any of it. It's about, and I don't want to diminish
kids.
Right. And I don't want to diminish, like, I always want to leave space for someone being, let's be kind, uneducated or ignorant of something, that it's not out of hate.
Sure.
You want to leave space for people to understand, to grow, but it's so plainly obvious. So it was about the kids. It was about, the kids are going to school and they're coming home trans. No. Then it became about fairness in sports. And it's like they're taking accomplishments away from your daughters, these 10 athletes nationwide. But as you see it, then it becomes, it's about protecting the kids. And it's about family. What's the term? I just said it before. Parental rights. Sorry, parental rights.
Yes.
But when these parents in Tennessee, in consultation with medical professionals, make the decision, the informed, probably difficult decision to let their child transition or begin that process at a certain age with as much information and care and medical advice as you can get, those parents' rights don't matter. The parents who don't like it, their right to be not uncomfortable trumps this family's informed rights to conduct themselves how they see fit for their child. But then today, what really I think bothered me the most after reading that article about, you said, is it Major Vandal?
Yes. Yep.
After reading that, because that's a sad story. That is, a decorated military officer not being able to serve their country simply because it makes Donald Trump feel icky. That doesn't feel like it's about protecting kids or, frankly, protecting the country.
Well, it's definitely not about protecting the country or any of the arguments it makes, because this woman was millions of dollars invested in her experience. She served in Afghanistan, and kicking her out for this reason is not only dangerous, but a huge waste of an investment into a human being's career.
Yes. And it's very sad to think. And I wrote, before I did the video today, I also wrote, in America, it seems every group, and this isn't beat up on white men day, but every group that isn't sort of white men has had their time to stew, to be beat down, and then to make lemonade out of lemons. And that's how you see in certain fields in this country, you'll see disproportionate success of groups of people, because those in some cases were the only avenues that they were allowed to sort of be free, work in, pursue. when you do this to people, like the trans community, like any other community that's been marginalized, whether it's listening to Sarah McBride on a podcast or seeing this soldier not be able to serve, you're like, these people have been tested. These people have been put through the ringer, and their talent and determination and grit are literally the fruits of that bigotry. It's almost like America gets to benefit from its past bigotry because it creates these cauldrons where groups have to find new ways to thrive. They almost, necessity is the mother of invention. They force different. So when you have somebody like this who's an accomplished military warrior, to use Pete Hegseth's terminology, and then you deny them the chance to do that, you're hurting them and you're hurting the country.
And today, the Supreme Court upheld a ban on gender-affirming care. And what does this mean, and how is it related? It's not related to the suicide hotline. That's something different, right?
And I'm sorry to, obviously the gender-affirming care case is huge. The suicide hotline one was the one that got me very mad.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, that's just another one of those, nope, we hate you people kind of moves.
Second, Trump administration will end LGBTQ suicide prevention service. The federal government says it will maintain funding for a national suicide prevention hotline, but no longer pay for specialized support for LGBTQ people.
And to me, that's another one of these gosh darn issues where, and no disrespect to Scott Galloway, Prof G, but whenever I hear about this crisis of young men in our country, and it really feels like it's crisis of young white men, that seems to be the driving force behind this, because I think we've had crises among young black men for a while, but it's now risen to a political national emergency for content creators that we now have this emergency among young men. But I like, that is an example of, okay, but if you have particular needs or experiences and a higher rate of suicide in that community, isn't the answer not a one size fits all? But hey, if this community is struggling more with this issue, it's probably good to have more specialized people there. But the flip side of that is white men are not happy right now. Everything stop. We've got to figure out how to right this ship. That's what it feels like. And then you have a little thing like the suicide prevention hotline, and you've got to strip that. And that's such a fuck you by Trump and his people. There's nothing more to that. That's not a cost saving. That's not a sort of righteous equality thing. That is a fuck you. And at that point I go, so do we still think it's just about protecting our kids when we've gotten to this? How protecting our kids from what? Not killing themselves?
Well, if you want to protect kids, then you would look at public health statistics and say, let's look at the things that are killing them the most. And it's guns. It's guns. But I also will push back on I don't think it's both things can be true. It's not a binary that there is a men's health crisis, young men, white men, black men. I agree with you. Obviously, it looks more like it's talking about white men and so on.
But I would say that's what's made it into a books and podcasts and zeitgeist sort of movement.
But it is a thing. And there is, believe it or not, I don't know if you're going to believe this, there is space to create content for every issue, and this is a big one, but it doesn't.
But can I tell you, I'm sorry to the one thing on this, and then I don't have to say anything more on this particular topic. But what bothers me, it's not that, hey, I had a white uncle. I'm half white man. I'm not somebody who doesn't see the problems of all different people. But what I find problematic is that we have the Trump regime, which is run on not just I'll be your champion, aggrieved white people, but also the problems of other people are not real, and we need to erase their history so we don't even learn about their past problems or the origins of their problems. And if that's your movement, then it's very hard to just even say, hey, because I've thought about this where I say, in terms of delivering a possible speech or talking to people in a town hall setting, where I say, it's very hard for me to think, hey, everybody's got problems. We need to listen to each other's problems. I do believe that. But how can I in good faith, go to a group of people, the MAGA group, pretty big group, that are actively disrespecting, disregarding, and trying to bury you aren't going to meet me even halfway because you want to keep moving the goalpost to, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but you get what I'm saying? Like I recognize that opioids are a problem in your community, or I recognize that offshoring jobs has hurt your community. What can you say to me that makes me feel like you understand my pain? Well, you're just a DEI hire, always complaining about racism, and you've had it too good. And I don't know about all this history that you're telling me is true.
Well, I think you're talking about the conversation, and you're talking about the time spent. You're trying, why should I try to win over this group or another? All I'm saying along this, and we can move on, is there is a crisis of all kinds of types for men of all kinds of types that we need to and should address. But we should always, I think, when we're talking about politics and certainly government resources and policy, be resourcing the folks who are most vulnerable, period. The groups who are being marginalized, period. Meaning when the vaccines first came out, they prioritized them towards the Black community in New York and other cities because they were being more affected by it. And white people got up in arms and said, why them first? Well, of course them first. They're more affected by it. All I'm saying is when it comes to government resources and policy, generally speaking, we don't need to be advocating for the interests of certainly affluent white men, but that doesn't also mean that we shouldn't be talking about the crisis that there is amongst men and white men as well, at least having a conversation about it, which is a lot of what is being done. It's, and then finally, education is an important thing. So is media and media literacy. And that's where it really.
And I thought about that, I just thought, not to get George Carlin on you with the language, but I was always like, it was the crack epidemic. It was the epidemic of single moms. And then when it affects white people, it's a crisis. And it's a crisis sounds like we need to help those people. An epidemic seems like an illness, like something that's going to infect us. And I think the language there just kind of tells you a lot about how this country has looked at these
issue
problems.
of the better illustration, of course, and we've both heard this forever and know this, is how crack was talked about with the Black community versus how heroin is talked about with the white community. I mean, I think that's the best illustration of the point that you're trying to make. So whatever the language is one thing. The penalties and the
fentanyl, we're willing to go to war over fentanyl. Instead, if it was crack, we would just send the cops into.
We did go to war over crack, and that war was against Black men, specifically Black bodies. And Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, documents the war on drugs and what it did specifically with crack to Black communities better than anything else that I've ever read. And that certainly did not happen and does not happen in white communities. So this is obviously we agree on that. What about that military parade? I got to hit your quick take.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think? My actual smart observation of it, at least, is that it was very embarrassing for the military and anybody who joined it. It was a real stain on the military. They looked very unorganized and bad, and they had all the old. I knew what they were trying to do. It was just gross and bad for every single reason, but certainly the reputation of our, supposedly strongest military in the world. It didn't look like that.
Yeah, I fortunately I got booked last minute on a show with Mark, the big fan of yours.
He brought you down, our great friend.
So I was kind of fortunate because knowing me, I would have sat and watched it and dissected it and done. And I didn't see it. I just saw some photos and some clips. It's if the man weren't so dangerous and so hell bent on hurting people. And I try not to be cynical with the protesting because I get it. I get that there is a sense of togetherness, a sense of optimism, a sense of hope that they can bring about. But I can't help but still be mad and just say, yeah, but if you voted for Kamala Harris, not that the people protesting aren't Harris voters already, but it's just so tough to be like, we've got to show him that we won't take this. And it's like, we are taking it. We are taking it. We can make symbolic gestures. We're taking it. No lube. That is the Trump second term way. And it's just sometimes it's hard. At times I look and say, that's very cool. I like that. I like seeing people with the flag. I like seeing people energized and letting other people know you're not alone. I get that. But it's still just so hard for me to say how stupid we are that we have to see Trump fuck up before we go, actually, oops.
That is
the parade. The parade's an embarrassment. So my point is, it made me, all I want to say was the parade was a total embarrassment, like everything else about having him as president. It's like, and also when he was at Fort Bragg and you had troops applauding like him or booing like elected officials.
Yeah.
I was like, this is why I've always said, I support most of the troops. I don't need you to be the same politics as me. I don't need you to have the same beliefs as me, but I'm sorry. Just like I don't think Trump deserves the respect of the office of the presidency because he does not respect that office himself. I don't like seeing troops who've had discipline hammered into them, hopefully, going like it's an MMA match and being like, yeah, Gavin Newsom sucks, bro.
Yeah, that's
what are you doing? What do you like? Why do I have to sit there and go, thank you for your service?
All of
maybe
those
you're just a
people who did
disrespectful punk with a gun.
So I feel like your take on the kind of the protest, I feel like it's smart but unhelpful. And here's what I mean. You said specifically, people are saying we're not going to take this, but we are taking it. What does it look like to not take it?
Right. It's it is to me. I was gearing up when he got elected for 2 years of deep frustration. That's what I was gearing up for, because I said we can protest, we can maybe pressure a few lawmakers. You know, they're really trying to figure out how they can stiff poor people out of food stamps and Medicaid. And hopefully they're able to do that at some point. But to me, it was more like the end of a season. You know, like the Stanley Cup playoffs just ended. Edmonton Oilers can't do anything. They lost to Florida. They can't do anything. They have to wait till next season. And I'm not saying to literally do nothing, but the choice was so embarrassingly easy that I'm not over that yet. I'm not over the fact that
I understand, but I just think that like there are people. At first, I was cynical about this New York City comptroller who, you know, put himself in between a migrant and a stormtrooper, because it's like he's running for office and maybe trying to get attention. You could say the same thing about Secretary Padilla going to Department of Homeland Security. You could say the same thing about those women in the mayor of Newark that went to the detainee facility in New Jersey, that they're doing it for political attention and so on. But then, you know, I watched that guy, Brad Lander, on last night, Chris Hayes, and he described the reason he's doing it as, and two things can be true. You're running for office and getting attention, but you're also practicing what we were taught by previous generations, nonviolent resistance. He literally attached himself to a migrant. I have friends who are standing out in front of these detainee facilities and doing everything they can to give people information, make sure they don't go in, and attaching themselves to these people. Like, I don't want to depress that energy. Like, people are in the streets trying to protect other people and doing all kinds of other things as well. And I think that matters a great deal. And I think that there's nothing we can do to stop it. And I feel like you are looking backwards, and it's unhelpful.
No, you're right. There is, you're right. And yes, people are doing good work. And I was going to say there's plenty of lawyers doing good work, obviously mucking this up. But
I appreciate, by the way, You're also, when I say you're looking backwards, I'm just making an example of you. We all do it every day. We all do the same thing you're doing every day. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this guy is the guy that so many people voted for after everything we saw. We all do that. I think it's important. But to look forward, let me just move the conversation along. Mikey Sherrill, your congresswoman, has won the Democratic primary to run for governor of New Jersey. You have said to me and others that you have been considering and run for Congress if that happened. Her seat is now open. Where are you on this?
I am working towards that. There's timing issues, and there's obviously I'm not prepared to make any kind of official statement. But no, I want to do it. And I'm not saying I want to do it hypothetically. I'm saying I'm going to do it. But I'm not officially right now doing it.
Okay. You need $500 million or something.
Yeah, I'll get on that soon. No, but it's, and I've articulated my theory for why I at least would be worth listening to.
Oh, it's great. That's why I ask about it. Really take you.
I'm not backing away, and I'm just saying I'm not making the Pete. It's official. Start the campaign. Send me the donations. But it is absolutely
The easiest way to do it for me is to imagine, when you're thinking of a candidate running for office, whether or not they'd be good or not. I imagine them what they'd be like on a campaign, talking to people. Then I imagine what they'd be like maybe on a debate stage. But I really imagine often what they would be like as a member of the oversight hearing committee. And seeing you question witnesses, we want that so badly. And it's kind of the criticism that you've made of so many of the elders who are still in office, and their inability to spar with some fucking Proud Boys hack who's being considered for Senate confirmation, and thinking of you being up there and any of those committees.
If Kash Patel, if I'm at his confirmation here, that's obviously the Senate, but I'd be like, sir, I'm over here. That would be just my little, you have cross eyes way to shake him up. Sir, if you could look at me, no, I'm over here.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that now, but you wouldn't actually do. I know it would be beneath you as a congressman.
Yes, of course. But I will say this: a couple of them are getting off their punches with Pete Hegseth. You're incompetent. I think you're a disgrace. They are.
Those today. I'm gonna grab them. Yeah.
But it's. I think yes. So I want to run. There is a process to it. I'm strategizing. So it's not a matter of not doing it. It's just not the time to go. It's official. But anybody who has been looking forward to this, anticipating it, or wanting me to do it, you have no reason to suppress those hopes and desires.
You've got an army of volunteers ready to help. So when you let us know, we'll set up a Zoom, and anybody that wants to help contribute in any number of ways to
cash primarily.
Cash for sure.
Okay, we're not. I don't need 5 coupons for back rubs if I'm running for.
I was just going to give you a back rub, not a coupon. My way in there. It could take forever to get up and down that back. Let me ask you about the MAGA civil war, and if you think it's anything. I've always held the belief that right-wing media is always been wagging the dog for all Republican politicians, and it's not been similar on the left, although that's changing a bit. Tucker Carlson versus Ted Cruz is the best thing since Elon Musk versus Trump a couple weeks ago, but you're seeing a lot of people in the MAGA movement, influential people, comedian Dave Smith, who somehow became famous.
He's apologized, and he's calling for Trump to be impeached. And I'm like, well, now you sound shrill. Impeached for what? Right. He disappointed you with his foreign policy choice? That's not a high crime and misdemeanor.
Well, if he goes to war, if he sends one plane or one bomb, it would be considered potentially. They tried to impeach, it wasn't very strong, but Bush for war in Iraq. So what do you think about the MAGA civil war over the Middle East war? Is it anything to talk about? What
Tucker Carlson did, and I'll never be here to defend Ted Cruz, but from the clips that I saw, it felt very much like a debate me bro moment. Like, I've come here with some random facts from the internet and I'm going to get you that you don't know. Like when he was like, what's the population of Iran? That's 92 million. Why don't you know that? Why didn't
watch the rest of it. There's new clips out. It gets a little bit more in depth in the sparring.
Okay, good.
It becomes pretty, but just the larger conversation about the fact that let me make it simpler. Does the fever, I always ask this, I go for the football every time I'm Lucy and Charlie Brown. Does anything break the MAGA cult fever?
No.
Does a war?
What Donald Trump does will become, will a few libertarians splinter off until some Democrat uses demands to be called a certain pronoun, and then they're all the way back with MAGA again. But will they lose some libertarians like Dave Smith over international action? Perhaps. The MAGA base will stay with him. Absolutely.
What if oil goes up? What if because of the war? I mean, who knows?
He will feed them bullshit to he will just say, you know what he'll do? He'll say, this is Iran. This is their fault. It's not my fault. I'm the good guy.
Okay. We can dispense with that. I got to ask you another one. What is your reaction to the assassination of these Democrats by this crazy, what I'm calling him as a Christian nationalist, the media's take, Republicans' take, Trump's not calling Tim Walz, his take? What do you think about this moment that we've seen these people murdered and their dog in such a gross way by such a typical, they shouldn't call him a lone wolf. He's been radicalized by his fucked up church. What do you make of any of this when that news broke, and what are your thoughts about it today?
It's very sad. It's very scary because I will say, as somebody who is thinking about running for office, and one of the strengths that I would try to bring would be communication and confrontation of a certain degree. It's scary. It's scary that these people were doing their job, and that, this is like almost turning the guys who used to shoot up abortion clinics into like MAGA weapons.
Yes.
It's like redirecting the weapon at people that MAGA doesn't like. It's very scary. That was my first thought, was that it's just very scary. And then a few days later when Trump said, I'm not calling Tim Walz, he's a whack job. It was one of those moments where I just said, oh, wow, he finds a new low. He always can find a new low. And then I'd like to see people posting about, with no evidence, in fact, contrary to evidence, that he was some left-wing lunatic. And that's not going to be corrected, I assume, right? That's just going to be, you're going to talk to people in a few years who will insist that guy was Antifa or something.
Well, you've got mainstream people saying that kid in Pennsylvania was anti-Trump, tried to shoot
Right,
Trump.
registered Republican, but gave $15 to Democrats, and therefore
these narratives, they stay. Yeah, you're right.
So I found it kind of chilling.
Yep.
And then once again, disgraceful.
The way it's handled, disgraceful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just these are reprehensible people. And I know people will go, well, the Republicans say the same thing about you. Okay, 2 + 2 is 4. I don't give a fuck if they say 2 + 2 is 10. 2 + 2 is 4. Donald Trump, we have an overwhelming amount of evidence that he's a bad person. And I believe people who follow him are not good people. I'm tired of this kind of you can't do this. It's like, have you heard how they talk about Democrats? And it's like, Donald Trump, the evidence is there. We have all that we need to see about Donald Trump being an absolutely atrocious human being. Nobody likes him for his good works or his charity or his disposition. They like him the way they like a wrestling character. That doesn't make a good person. And to be following Donald Trump, and that is the scary part to me, is that And I referred to it on Rain on Your Parade tomorrow, and the author liked it. I said, we're in a cold civil war. And I said, and it's heating up. And there are not just a lot of, this isn't, oh, I'm a Republican. This isn't no longer like, hey, I always vote Republican. I'm from, I grew up a Republican, I vote Republican. These are MAGA Trump people, and there are tens of millions of them. And if they aren't violent, which of course the vast majority aren't, we can't pretend like it's a militia of 70 million people. But I question the character and morality and decency of all of them. And that's a scary thing. To be like 50% of the voting population in this country are people that I genuinely question the character and decency of. In a real deep way, not in a, oh, do you cheat on, I'm not that this doesn't count, but like, oh, you cheat on your wife or you cheat on your taxes. I'm talking like character, like core of the nation. Do you stand for anything? Do you care about any of the foundational principles of this country? Or do you care about your fellow man? Like it's bad. It's creepy and it's bad.
Did you see this morning when he went out to talk to announce that they're putting up they're installing these new flagpoles?
Mm-mm.
He was talking about these flagpoles that they're putting up in the White House. He's having put up, and first of all, he described them in the gayest way possible. It was pretty. Everybody was laughing at that, but he also then said, we're going to be having a flag raising. Some people would say it's called something different, an E word, but I don't want to say that because that would be. He said he didn't want to say erection.
Erection. Wow.
And it was. I thought about it for a disproportionate amount of time this morning because I was just thinking of like the president of the United States is making a dick joke. How is that? I'm like, well, if it was like really subtle innuendo.
Reagan could make it in a classy, funny way.
Reagan. Yeah, I don't know how he would about the flagpole. I don't think he would about the flagpole. Maybe in some other situation. But it just seemed like it was just so very much like, and I don't mean like 5 or 6 year old erect. Like it was very, very, it was weird. And to see it, and it's so embarrassing. And every day he's mean and terrible and stupid. But then there's these moments where it's like, it's so embarrassing. It's so cringy that he's there making these. And he's got people standing, all the guys that were going to put up the flagpoles, all standing behind him, listening to him make this.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, people who vote for Trump, I'm sorry, you don't. You either don't know what's going on or anything, or you genuinely don't care and you just think it's like a reality show. And that's also a possibility that people are so out in la la land or buried in sort of a virtual world of social media and things like that, that they're just kind of like picking a favorite reality show character. I mean, maybe that's the tiny space of grace I can give MAGA, which is like, we need to get some people off the internet. We need to get like some people detoxed from the internet. I think if we could do a nationwide internet detox, no, we can't, of course. But I'm saying that's the level of thing. But that's as big and daunting as like decarbonizing our energy grid. Like these are huge things that would benefit us that we just can't do. We have neither the capacity nor the patience to do the things we need to do.
Love talking to you. Love these conversations. Very excited that your podcast is coming back. And tell us again, you're going to be doing interviews. Who are you talking to in tomorrow's first episode back?
Tomorrow's episode is author, former Clinton speechwriter, professor at City University of New York, Ted Widmer. He wrote a book that came out in 2020 called Lincoln on the Verge. And a fan of mine recommended it to me. And I only got to it like last year. And I loved it. And it was so, it just listen to the episode because I know that's like Lincoln. That's not current. I'm telling you, it's a really good discussion. And the book it's the kind of book that it was written before January 6th. So he couldn't have been trying to draw cute parallels or be like, look, wink, wink. My book is very relevant. I cherry picked or guided the information. This thing was published, a year before January 6th. And it is eerie, like this story that he found about Lincoln traveling across the country to get inaugurated while there was a plot to kill him. and they wanted to bust into the Capitol during the vote counting. And like this Confederate general who like stood his ground and was like, I can't let you do that, even though he was a Confederate. Because he was like, it's the vote. It's a legitimate vote. And I jokingly said, oh, that guy, they called him the Mike Pence of the Confederacy. But it was just a book that stunned me in terms of how he found this unique Lincoln story and then how relevant it really was. Not in some bullshit like, hey, isn't it interesting how history, it was like, this was eerie. And I said, that's what made me think we're in a cold civil war. I said, we might be at the beginning of this process also. We don't know how this is going to play out with Trump and the MAGA movement. So it'll be up on my YouTube channel by, lunchtime tomorrow, and it'll be tomorrow morning on, whatever your podcast platforms are, Spotify, Apple, et cetera. Rain on your parade, everybody. It's back every Thursday.
Did you say Angus King questioning Senator King from Maine questioning Pete Hegseth about the renaming of bases back to Confederate names?
I didn't. Do you have audio for us? No, not ready. It'll be in the pre-show tomorrow.
I can see if I can find it real quick, but it's real good.
I'll look it up.
Huh?
I'll look it up after.
It's exactly what you would want how you would want someone to talk to anybody who supports Confederate soldiers.
I call Pete Hegseth the Cobra Kai defense secretary.
Why do you say that?
He feels like he's from the Cobra Kai dojo. Did you not see the Karate Kid you never saw the Karate Kid?
I know what you're talking about. I just didn't really quite get the.
All right. I'm just hoping that I can hear the laughter tomorrow of people hearing that and going, that's a perfect joke, JL.
I'm sure they loved it. I'm sorry I missed it, specifically the parallel, but I'll figure it out later. Anyway, it was quite an exchange when he was just demanding answers from Hegseth on the renaming of bases. And, Hegseth's like, we don't want to erase our history. And he goes, if you ask any of these people, they're so happy that the base, to a person, he said, Hegseth, to a person, they're happy that the base had been renamed. I'm like, did you talk to any of the black persons? Do you think they're happy that
we got rid of them? They were DEI.
Oh, they're all gone?
No, it's Pete Hegseth, these are people that I look at and I think, yeah, Pete Hegseth is actually a piece of shit.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah, but it's like that. I'm sure that helped him. That helped him get the position. But it's every day. I didn't expect. I sort of rolled my eyes during the first Trump presidency of people always going, "I'm so exhausted. I'm done. I can't take it anymore." But this term, I've started to feel that exhaustion a lot more.
Oh yeah. Oh, I hear it all the time. Yep. It's hard.
But mine's real, Pete. Like, I'm not over dramatic. I'm giving my exhaustion to say, like, I'm a more cynical, battle tested warrior. And my exhaustion is like, whoa, we should now take notice because JL is exhausted.
Take care of yourself. I need you and we need you. So do whatever you got to do to stay in the fight because you're the one we've been waiting for. I wasn't talking to you, JL. I was talking to my next guest. Coming up.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I hope and change. That's what I'm promising to bring. Yes, we can.
You bring it to me in all the ways. You killed at that gig this past weekend. I saw the clips.
Yeah. It's what I do, Pete.
Really funny. Good job.
Thank you.
Everybody's ready.
I'm thinking about doing some fake Trump rallies for Mikey Sherrill. Like shows where I'm endorsing Jack Ciattarelli, her Republican counterpart, but as Trump.
That's a great idea.
Right?
That's a great idea. Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Curry a little favor with the future governor also?
Yeah, for sure. But why not just instead of for sure do a show, but making a few videos?
Oh, I'm going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's see, Pete, this is how I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but we're gonna start to localize, what I do a little bit more.
Okay.
You know?
I see. Well, I'm here for it.
The money from California and Nevada is good, but those aren't votes.
Right.
So
you got to the locals. I understand. I get the game. Thank you very much. I'll let you go. I'm hitting end. Thanks everybody for coming by the live, and we will talk to you later. Yeah, there you go. JL Cauvin. Go watch it on YouTube at youtube.com/standupwithpete. Subscribe to the Substack as well at Stand Up With Pete. Follow me on Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook and what else? Yeah, all of it. I'm still on Twitter even sometimes, and I have no shame. There you go. That's all I've got from jail. And for today, I think I might bring something later today live. I'm working on it. We'll see. I just booked Simon Rosenberg. He's a pretty big deal from the Hopium Chronicles. Finally got him on. That'll be at the end of the month, I believe. Yeah, I think it's like June 30th that I'm taping with him. Okay, well, have a great weekend. I hope that you'll consider joining us in person September 5th through 7th at Farm Jam at Kevin Richburg's farm in central New York. Fly into Syracuse. You can stay for free at Kevin's if you want to pitch a tent or you've got an RV or you sleep in your car or whatever. And hopefully we'll see you. We'll eat good food. We're going to do day trips to winery, and we're going to get on a boat and go on the lake, and we're going to make food and pick fruit together. It's going to be a great time. Listen to music, I'm sure, talk, and we'll see. Hopefully you'll consider coming to Farm Jam September 5th through 7th. There's more details in today's show notes, as well as a message from me in there every day if you're a Patreon subscriber. Your vitamin N as well. That is it. That is all. Jon Carroll was at our hangout last night. Always great to see you, John. If you're listening, my bumblebee's here at the end. Go buy his album, johncarroll.org, and find your peace, find your joy, take care of your mental health, be mindful of the thoughts that you are thinking, and then maybe think other thoughts about other outcomes. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye.
Stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball.